Hey, it's Adam Ward here with What If It Was True? Our mission is to share the gospel with all 2.5 million people in the Columbus region. Now, recently I read a new study by Barna and AlphaUSA Group called Reviving Evangelism. This book just came out this year. It's excellent. The findings from it are jaw-dropping, so I just wanted to share those with you. It shows how we've lost our ability to evangelize, but it also shows what we can do to win in the future. So, first of all, this was by Barna and AlphaUSA. So the research methodology was excellent, and the how to conduct evangelism is covered. They looked at predominantly 3 different groups. So they had practicing Christians. So these are people that go to church at least once a month. Faith is important to them. We have lapsed Christians. So these are people at one point they did go to church. They don't go to church anymore. Faith is not as important to them. And then we have non-Christians. So this would include atheists, agnostics, and people who aren't interested in any type of religion. And they also talked about 4 generations. So we have the millennials, and if we look at the millennials, that's talking about ages 20 to 34. We've got Gen X. That's myself. So in the 35 to 53-year-old, we've got the boomers. And the boomers go from 54 up to 72. And then we have the elders, which are 73 and above. So 3 different types of people. They looked at slicing it across 4 different generations. And I want to start by covering what each of these different groups, what their insights were, what they said. So first, let's look at practicing Christians. And this is right at the beginning. In another one of my videos, I talked about this, but almost half of millennials think it's wrong to evangelize. These are practicing Christians. The interesting thing is, though, that 2/3 of them say it's important to their faith that they share about Jesus. So there is a dichotomy here in between these two. 40%, almost 40% of Christians say they have no non-Christian friends or family members. Now this is a scary statistic, because if almost 40% say they don't have it, then the pool of what people they can talk to is significantly less. We have over half have not had a conversation, less than 2 or more spiritual conversations over the past year with non-Christians. That is a high number. But of those that had at least 1 or more, they were very encouraged, and they wanted to have more spiritual conversations in the future. So they found some pretty incredible stuff about lapsed Christians and non-Christians too. But first I want to get into a little bit about the introduction of the book. They say in the introduction to the study that the purpose, the mission of the church is to spread the gospel. And it should never be about numbers. If we share the gospel, the numbers will come. And it's all about the good news. So that's what we want to make sure, is that we are focusing on the gospel. They found 3 key realities when it comes to evangelism. So these 3 are that culture, the forces at work in culture and religion are actually making it very difficult. It's eroding the capability for evangelism. Our perspective of ourselves as Christians is inaccurate. And we can just look at the study results to see what that is. But there's also a significant opportunity for us to be able to go out and evangelize despite this. So, one of the big things when they talked about and they found out is that we as Christians do not have a united front. We operate independently. We're not coming across as united. We don't know how to have conversations about spiritual things. And then the last thing is that our reputation as Christianity is actually really bad. So, I hope this will be for you, as it was for me, a wake-up call on what we need to do to pay attention, to engage our community, and to fulfill the Great Commission. Now, we have found the trend of church decline in Columbus, and the people that know the gospel is going down. That also reflects what Barna and Alpha found in their study. But I want to take some of the key findings that are right here on pages 12 and 13 of the book about the lapsed Christians and the non-Christians and share those with you. So first we're going to talk about these two groups right here. So 71% say they are not on a quest to find spiritual truth. That's just not important to them anymore. They're living their lives, the spiritual element, not even that big of a deal. Next, 38% say they have no questions about faith, but some are more apt to say so than others. So almost 40%. Hey, I don't have questions about faith. I don't want to talk about it. The top qualities that they would look for in a person is someone who listens without judgment. Ouch. And then someone who doesn't force a conclusion. In most conversations that we have as Christians, there is some air of judgment to it, and we almost always want to drive to make a decision. These are the two biggest things that they're looking for. Now, they're also open. They said if there was more evidence for Christianity, that they would support it, and if Christianity had a better reputation, then they would be open to it. So those are both incredible findings that serve as a kind of wind in our sails. Of course, when I read this first part, my heart sank, but it opened the door to show that we can reach the lost. So let's go into each one of these two groups individually. So first, we have the religious non-Christians, part of the non-Christians. So these are people that practice other religions. So this could be Islam or Buddhism or Scientology. And what they find is that Christianity needs better evidence. So they want to marry science and faith. Now, there is a ton of evidence out there. As an engineer, I have studied the science and I've also studied the Bible. We need to find out how to get it. There's books out there on it. We can learn how to support that. Next is that Christians need a better reputation. So we need to work on the long-hidden systemic sins that we have been guilty of. We need to be able to come together to have a united front. And then the last thing, if churches would cooperate to fix stuff in my community. That to me made me really sad to think that they would be open if they saw that churches were working together for their community. So this is on the religious piece. Let's talk about the lapsed Christians. So these are people that haven't been to church. Oh, before I say that, go on to this. On the religious piece, the least important thing to them was that the Christians around them were demonstrating a vibrant faith. That was actually the least important thing to them. Okay, so for lapsed Christians, they want, number one thing, they want to see churches working together. So they want to see cooperation. Number two is they want to have an eye-opening spiritual experience themselves. Now, if we think about what Jesus said when he was at the end of his ministry, he's like, look, not only are you guys going to do these signs, but you're going to do ones that are even greater. And so we need to get back to the spiritual depth and talk about dealing with spiritual oppression, with healing, with some of these other things that are metaphysical that can only happen with a God intervention. And last is that Christians would be more humble and aware of their shortcomings. I mean, these are people that used to go to church, and they say, "I would come back if I saw this." What they're not impressed by, and they don't care, is if Christians can articulate their faith. That's just not an important piece for them. So, not surprisingly, these two, this group right here wants to see science and faith coming together. This group wants to see the church coming together. And then that leaves the next group, agnostics and atheists. Okay, so atheists and agnostics and the nones, these are the people that don't want to have anything to do with a supreme being, and just God's not interested in them or any form of a God. So the number one thing is more evidence. So if they saw evidence supporting Christianity, they would actually be open to it. They talked about us needing a better reputation as Christians. And then last, which doesn't surprise me, that even though they claim to be atheists or agnostics, if they had an eye-opening experience, they would be open to faith. They would be open to Christianity. The least important to them, like the other group, is to be able to articulate that they're Christian. The Christians they know would be able to articulate their faith. That's just not an important factor to that. So this goes to reinforce how we need to merge the science and faith together, how we need to get into being able to leverage the advanced gifts that Jesus promised that He'd leave us, that we see operating around the world. Now, the study cautions that, to be clear, a majority of U.S. adults, and the vast majority, almost 90% of non-religious adults, believe that evangelism is religious extremism. So this is the way they're going to view it, as extremism. But look, we've got these things that are impacting our society. We've got increased isolationism, right? People, despite being connected, aren't actually connected with people. And now we have diminishing spiritual interest. So these are two things that are forces at work. Now, Tim Keller, great pastor in New York City, he talks about, he's done extensive research on what's needed historically for revivals, for great awakenings, and he had three things that he talked about in this book, what we need to do to reach towards that. Number one is we need to have a gospel rediscovery. So what is it? It is the good news. So we need to get into it, get deeper into it, and have it be meaningful for us. Number two is contextual creativity. We have access to the most creative being in the universe, and we need to be able to turn that creativity into things that work effectively today. And then last is that we need to bathe ourselves in extraordinary prayer. This cannot be underestimated. In fact, one of my favorite times during the week is my Wednesday morning prayer call with a Catalyst for Columbus. There are a dozen people that get on that call every week and just pray across the city for all of the ministries. Extraordinary prayer is critical to that. He also says that conservative churches need to rediscover grace, and that liberal churches need to rediscover the cross. And I think I have found that too when looking across the churches in Columbus. Now, as Christians, some of us feel ready, but we're not all willing, because we do have a growing number of people who think that it is extreme. And in today's culture, disagreement means judgment. So it's not the fact that we're saying their position is. When we say their position is, they think they're being judged. So that's tough. Now, at the end of the article, they talk about the ways that we can actually impact. So when we're looking at the study, they say, here's the ways. The two best ways for Christians to evangelize to non-Christians. Number one is one-on-one conversation. Casual one-on-one conversation. And the number two is small, casual, small group conversation. Wow. A tract, right, or a person on the street are the least desirable things for these people. People are looking for sincere, friendly engagement. Now, they identified 4 groups of people that are more hungry than others. These are the people that would pay attention far faster than their counterparts. Religious non-Christians. So people who are open to other religions. People who live in an urban environment as opposed to a suburban environment. People who make less than $50,000 a year. And then young adults who have a general sense of emptiness. These 4 groups right here are more open to the gospel than ever. A lot of the church plants I see today are happening in suburban areas where there is more money. And we're not addressing the young adults. Only half of the millennials are represented in the church. So we have a great opportunity for that. So the last thing I want to conclude with is they talk about the challenges. They do overall summary of the challenges and overall summary of the opportunities. So I just wanted to read this list. Challenges: more religiously unaffiliated adults. People are becoming their own internal sources of authority. That people as a whole shouldn't criticize the life choices of others. Of course, we see that with the LGBTQ community. That we are viewed as extremists. That there are negative perceptions of Christianity. That people are skeptical of our sincerity. And going back to this one, that we as Christians have outsourced the spiritual conversations to the church and the pastor on the stage, when it should be and is most effective one-on-one or in small groups. Another challenge is that we have the highest self-reported level of conversational barriers, and that we know over half of Christians, practicing Christians, don't actually know the Great Commission. So that's a pretty daunting list, but listen to the opportunities. We can have candid talk in a radically transparent culture now. We can come up with new models of evangelism, new mentality for evangelists. We have a whole digital domain where we can engage in spiritual conversations. We need to learn the sacred art of give and take conversation, where we listen and we let them talk and then we reply. We need to make time for people in real life. That's what they found as a great opportunity to be able to leverage sacred and spiritual experiences. People are isolated. That, it talks about the emptiness of the young adults. That we as a church need to repent for our long hidden systemic sins. But that faith is flourishing in unexpected places. So those are the opportunities that we have in reviving evangelism. There are also several great interviews in here from church leaders, multi-denominational, different positions within the church. There's a ton of data in here that you can look at. I recommend, if you want to go deeper, to go to barna.org and buy this book. Also, at What If It Was True, we're committed to evangelizing everyone in Columbus. And we want to be able to partner with you. If you don't want to dig into this data, if you want us to come in to present to your small groups, to present to your congregation, I love the fact that we're getting pull from pastors now that for me to come and speak at their churches, to share with their congregation the importance of what's going on. We'd love to be able to do that with you too. Hopefully, this gave you some insight on where evangelism is going in the United States, what we need to do to win. And I just want to thank you for your time.